Good boy, Tucker.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
Hey.
Welcome.
Work smarter where you want.
Consistency is key.
And remember, if it's not in Redtail, it never happened.
This is learning at its most fun.
Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Beltran, and I'm one of the trainers here at Redtail Technology. Today, we're going to be discussing a Redtail essential specifically on activities. Now, activities have to be actually my favorite topic to talk about. It really is kind of our gateway into what's happening in the future. It can also kind of give us a glimpse into our past. I know it kind of flirts that little line between what has already happened and what's going to happen. So it really is something that can help us keep track of what's going on in our daily lives. Now, if it is easier to think of activities as strictly future events, definitely you can think that, because again, activities can be 2 seconds from now, or it can be 20 minutes from now to a whole on next year. So it really can, again, be that window into our future. Now, when it comes to activities, there's multiple ways to add an activity, and I'll go over all of them here. But I always want to stress that just because there are multiple ways to do it, you're going to find what works best for you. And honestly, that's perfectly fine. If it works for you, stick with it. It's not a bad thing if you do it differently than someone else. So I just wanted to point that out really fast. But let's hop into the system, because it's always easier to see it and demonstrate it than to just talk about it. So let's hop on over. So when we first start off, actually, I start off on my Today page. Now, you might have your preferences set up differently, but by default, this is your Today page. And I actually always recommend leaving it that way, because right here in the middle, we have these things to do today, which actually are your activities. So I really rely on just this first thing in the morning, so I know what's going on. I can kind of prepare myself for the day to go, okay, looks like I might have a breather for about 10 minutes right here in this morning. But again, this is just your really quick glance to say, hey, here's what I've got literally on my agenda for today. So you can also see kind of over on here on the right-hand side, though, this is one way we can add an activity. So if you come on over here, we can click this button. You can also come up to this little quick add button at the top. That's a little plus sign icon. And then when you hover over it here, that's where you have this activities. So you'll get this pop up. And again, you can do either or from this Today page. There's no wrong way on this one. It's just a matter of preference. And you can actually create your activity. I'm going to hold off on that just a moment, because I want to show the other ways you could do that as well. But right here on this Today page, the one thing I really want to stress when it comes to activities is to make sure that we actually complete them when we're actually finished with them. So if we already followed up with Bruce this morning, maybe that was something I knocked out first thing this morning, I can come on over here to this left-hand side, click on this action icon, and complete just this individual task. Now, maybe I actually completed all 3 of these, because this should have happened right before this webinar. So if that happened, I can actually highlight all of them with just this one button on the left, and actually come over to this activity options and complete. So this gives you, again, that option to complete in bulk. So if it is a struggle where maybe your day really is extremely chaotic, I can relate to that. I feel like times have been a moot point anymore, but at least by the end of the day, come in here and mark it complete. I always say as soon as possible, and if that possible is not till 5 o'clock this evening, so be it. Just make sure you complete them. Now, if you don't complete them, that's actually where it's coming into this past due option. So if I click on this past due, it's going to give us everything that I still have open in terms of activities. So again, don't be us. Do not have activities that are dating back over a month ago. Try to complete them as soon as possible. When we don't complete our activities, it kind of gives off this mixed signal saying, hey, did we actually do it, or do we need to reschedule? So we're giving this kind of incorrect data in here. We're creating this bad data. So if this really did happen, come on over here and complete this. Again, you can highlight multiple things and have that same complete in bulk option. Now, maybe you're kind of like me, where I feel like every Monday I come in with all of these ambition activities that I'm going to get done, but it never fails. I still have things that are left on my agenda. It never fails on a Monday. So if that is similar, you can relate to that situation on any given day, you can always come in here and actually highlight anything that you didn't complete and have this rollover option. So what this rollover is going to do is it's going to take it from whatever day it was on and actually bring it onto today's schedule. So it's not getting forgotten. It's not staying open and then, we're hoping it disappears. No, we're bringing it back into our own agenda to get done today. So I'm a huge fan of this. Like I said, I feel like my Mondays are just absurd. So on Tuesday, this is the first thing I'll actually do is I'll review my past due, see if I have anything, and I'll click that rollover option so I can make sure I get those done. So just wanted to point that out as far as what you could do should you have past due activities. Now, you might have also noticed by default when I clicked that past due, it actually reflects for me. If you are maybe more of an administrative role and you're kind of in charge of booking everyone, you're the gatekeeper of activities really, you can always change this to reflect who it is you might be looking for. So maybe I need to look at Paul's. I can see all of those activities for Paul and find, whoa, I really need to see if this actually happened. And if so, I need to complete this or reschedule it. So again, you can change that. You can also filter a specific date range. Now coming back, because I do want to point out there's another way to get to this same page actually. So you can click this past due, or somewhat over in the top here, you have this activities tab. This can also bring you to those open activities. So if I wanted, again, come back in here, maybe I want to look at past due and in the future, I can always, again, change my filter option in here, update everything that I really should update in here, and then move forward from there. Again, one thing I'm going to stress it multiple times, complete our activities. Why that's so valuable, besides it not giving us this sense of, hey, did this actually happen? Once activities are completed, they actually become historical notes on the contact record. So while activities are everything in the future, notes are everything in the past. So again, it's saying, yep, I completed that client review. Yes, I had that quarterly checkup. I went ahead and ran that specific report. It's saying you've completed it, and that's why it becomes that historical note. You can also, if you might have noticed as well, you can add an activity while you're on this page as well. So there really are multiple ways. You really don't have an excuse saying, I don't know where to go. There's multiple ways to actually go about adding that activity. So again, the today page is giving us kind of that like screenshot as to what we have going on. But let's actually hop into an actual contact so you can see activities when it's related to a contact. So I'm actually just going to pull up someone I've been in recently. So I'm going to come up to my recently viewed. I'm going to pick on Tim Taylor today. So we'll open him up. And right in here, we get onto our contact. And I'm actually already on my past due and next 30. Every now and then I'll get the call of, hey, my advisor wants it set to the past due next 30, not the latest notes. How do I get that set? If you actually just click on here, it's kind of like the system remembers, hey, you last left this contact on here. So if I pull up a different contact, it'll also stay on here. But as you might have noticed as well, there's another add activity button right at the top here. So if you find, hey, again, there's no way for me to know where to go, there's multiple ways. When I click on this add activity, it's also going to give me that same pop-up that I saw when I'm on that today page. One thing I also want to point out when it comes to being on the contact page itself versus being on the today page is there's actually a little benefit when you start on the contact record. So I'm going to open up the today page on a different tab here. And just so we can, again, I'm a big visual person, so if I don't see it, I'm not going to remember it. But if I click add activity from here, I have this contact name pre-filled. Similarly, if I quick add an activity, it's also going to pre-fill his name when I'm on the contact record. If I start on pretty much any other page and I quick add an activity, I have to remember to put in that contact name. Now, it's not really complicated. I will say putting in the person's name is not something that's really difficult. However, that is something that could potentially cause some unnecessary errors in some whoops, I didn't mean to do that type of situations. I had a client I was talking to last week who she didn't realize it was just out of habit. She kind of morphed them into one person, but there was a senior, junior, and a third. And she was actually adding the activities to the wrong person. Now, that's not a big deal. Again, we can always come in here and actually update who it's supposed to be for. But again, that just caused us to do more work. So if that is something where you could run the risk, if you have very similar names or you do have seniors, juniors, thirds, fourths, fifths, you're going down the row, it might be easier just to go to that contact record just to make sure you are putting it on that right person. So coming back to this grade and activity tab, something else that's really helpful is actually this selected template. Now, if you find you are booking pretty much the same activity over and over and over, and you're finding it so monotonous, that's really where this template can come in. It can help actually pre-fill some of the fields that are down here. So that way, again, we don't have to feel like we're doing it over and over. So some of these fields that would actually apply are subject itself. So subject is saying, hey, here's something I'm just going to quick glance as to what it is about. Is it an all-day activity? So you might have tasks within the system itself where it doesn't need to happen at 9 a.m. as long as it's done by 5 p.m. today. That's where the all-day task can come in. If it isn't something like that, it has to be at a specific time. So thinking along the lines of maybe meetings, or if you have a person who's like, hey, don't call me before 3 p.m., that's just not, I won't be able to answer. This really could help you as far as setting that specific time. So in here, you'll pick that specific date, you'll pick that specific start time, as well as how long we think it'll be, whether it's that meeting or that phone call. Now, right below that, we have our type and our category. Now, these two sections are really your way to easily organize what this activity is truly about. Now, if I come over here to type, if you're looking at yours and you only see these 4 options at the top here, that's not a bad thing. Those are your system types. It's always a good start. But if you're looking at mine and you're wondering how in the world did I get all of these different options, these are ones that we've added in here. You do have to be an admin in terms of Redtail to set these up. But if you are an admin, you can go to your managed database list found within your manager account section and add these custom types in here. Now, as far as really what a type is, this is just kind of your medium or method as to like what this activity is. So I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I've done quite a few webinars in the last few months, being cooped up at our homes here. So I feel like I've used webinar far more than I used to. But I have also used phone call quite a bit. I can honestly say face-to-face has been very limited, not something I'm acquainted to at this moment. But going back to our normal situations, this is where we can use that face-to-face meeting to help distinguish maybe what is a face-to-face versus just a phone call. Also keep in mind when we're setting our types, you can use this for internal as well. So like we have staff meeting down here at the bottom. During this kind of work from home situation that we've been in, the training team specifically, we've had these kind of, they're called stand-up meetings. We've had 15-minute meetings that literally just are kind of catch-ups. It's saying, you know, here's what we've got on our plate this week. Here's the situations we've been presented with. And I'm doing well. You know, that's always a good thing. We want to let everyone know we're doing fine. So we've used that for staff meeting as well. And then making it further, we can come in here and make it with our details. That's our category. So if I was doing something like a webinar, or maybe I had client meeting on here, this is our way to describe, okay, well, if it is a client meeting, what is it about? Is it about just client updates? Are we talking about account support specifically? Is it a phone call that had to deal with maybe some questions on an account? Or did it have to deal with maybe onboarding a client? This is your way, again, to add that detailed level to it. So again, slide type, this is something that you can customize that is in your managed database list. Again, you just have to be an admin. And if you are not an admin, just get in contact with someone who is, or your database owner, and they can definitely get these added to you so that way you can have that more organized level. This will also come into effect and really help us when it comes to reporting. Because again, that's something that we can use to filter it so that way we can narrow it down in terms of those reports. But coming back to adding an activity, because I don't want to jump ahead there too quickly, we also have the ability to add multiple attendees. So our attendees are actually the users of your system itself. So in here, if it is something that multiples have to be on, something like our stand-up meetings that we have, we'd add all of us that are on the training team to this particular activity, so that way we are all a part of that. Again, you can have it where it's just you, or you can have technically everyone, and then that way you have that activity in there. You also have the option to set importance and priority. I always like to say this is kind of a caveat though, because if you set everything too high, it is no longer of a high importance. Everything's the same. So use this sparingly. What I always like to say when it comes to importance and priority, maybe you have 3 activities that you have to get done today. They're all really big, but one has a little bit more kind of time sensitive that has to happen. That's where I might use this high and then set a priority. So what I've seen here is that, okay, if that's the first project I have to get done, high and a priority of 1. And then I could use, okay, this one's a normal, this one's a 2, and then I could use a low and have it as like a 3. That's something I've seen. I've also seen where people just use high to let them know that, hey, this is the first project, the first task, the first thing that you have to get done today. No questions asked, this is a value. So again, importance and priority are yours to help kind of organize your day, but use it sparingly. Don't put everything to high. Otherwise, it just makes it useless, and that's still the same as normal. But coming back to that template option here, this again is going to pre-fill some of this data in here. So if I had something like client review, that's something I might be typing quite a bit, and I have a type in a category that matches it, I can have this template pre-fill my subject, pre-fill the type in category. If it was something that needed to be all day, I could even have that default. I can have it default to multiple attendees and also set that importance level. So this is what's happening for client review. It switched a couple of the items in here, but just to show you another version that has multiple attendees, this also pre-filled my client's meeting subject, also pre-filled my typing category, and added 2 different people for my attendees. So those templates really can help you kind of save that time. And again, it could help as far as your sanity on cutting back on some of the, all right, let me find it, going over and over. So as far as if you are going to kind of add those activities, it's similar to how we would just fill in the information we just did there. But to do that, you're going to click your name and then come on down to manage your account. So I'm going to open this up in a new tab here. And I'm going to come on over to my manage account section, and under manage templates, the very first option here, that's where we're going to see that activity template. So in here again, if you're looking at yours and you're not seeing anything, that's not a bad thing. It just means you haven't done this yet. But to create a new one, you're going to click on that new button. Bet you didn't see that coming. But in here, you're going to name it whatever it has to deal with. So if it's client reviews, client reviews. If it's onboarding a client meeting, number 1, onboard client meeting number 1. If it has to deal with maybe an internal project. I know right now we've been able to, as weird it is, kind of catch up on some of those things we've been putting in that back burner. Maybe it is internal project. And again, you're going to utilize this type in this category to really help pre-fill and organize this data in here. So as you're looking at this, this is really similar to when we're just adding an activity from start here. It's basically laying it out that that foundation, so we don't have to again do it every single time. So just wanted to point that out because it's something I absolutely love. It's been saving me. So I really wanted to point that out for you guys. Now, if this was all the information we needed to put in there as far as the data, that's where we can click this create activity. However, if you actually click this create and edit, this blue button, it's going to give you a little bit more detail. So I'm going to pick in something that's already created here. And you're going to see I come into a page that has even more options when it comes to activities. So it still has the subject though, still has the start and date and end time and the type and the category. The original attendees over here. So maybe if I forgot to add someone, I can always come in here and I'll add myself to this situation here. I can add myself in here. Maybe I need to add the spouse of a contact to this activity as well. You can always add in a secondary person. So again, maybe Jillian needs to be aware of this. I can add Jillian into the situation here. One thing that's new to this page besides these options is actually location. So again, if you are meeting up with someone, I know this is really not an option right now, but maybe you're meeting up with someone at a restaurant for like a lunch meeting, you could put in technically that location here, so that way you're not getting maybe going to the wrong one. That's always helpful. But something else I've seen really getting used in this spot recently is if you are doing kind of like those Zoom meetings or those go-to meetings or WebEx or what other creative one is out there, you can put that location of that like actual URL link right here as well. So I've seen a lot of people use it for those situations. I've also seen them put that in description. So this really is an either or option that can help you out. Again, just adding as much into this activity as possible. Importance and priority also make a comeback, as well as getting your completion. So if this is more of like an internal project, and you kind of want to let everyone know that, hey, I'm 50% done, by all means, you can come in here and do that. Now, a couple of things that I absolutely love pointing out when it comes to an activity with this create and edit feature is this ability to add a linked note. So if it is something where it's an ongoing kind of activity, maybe it's hey, I started this morning, had a couple things that went into it, but I want you to be aware of it scenario, that's where this linked note can come in. So if it's something like, hey, you know, Tim called for to pull 1,200 out of this account, I can add that in as a linked note so that way it's not lost. Every now and then I'll see that kind of information put in the description. I do recommend putting anything that's a recommendation, a suggestion, anything that's going to impact that contact, or anything that could come back to us down the road going, well, did you do this? If you find yourself questioning that, put it in as a linked note. This is going to date, time, and user stamp it, and it's not going to let you just have it disappear. Versus if you put like, hey, on 5/14/20, I did this, blah, 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 blah. Someone could easily come in here and delete that and it's gone. So that's why I always recommend that linked note option. Now, if it is something that had to deal with a specific account, by all means, you can always come in here and link that specific account here. Or if there's a specific document, maybe there's a specific form every time you're onboarding a client you want filled in, you can always attach that here as well. Now, something that actually changed recently, and I'm sure many of you who are new, this will not be a change, that's a good thing, but this recurrence option changed just, I want to say last week here, just within a couple times here. And it's actually easier in my mind here, but what it's saying here is that it's giving you the option, if it's something that repeats daily, you just pick this daily option. If it's something that repeats once a week, that's where this once a week option's coming in. Now, if you're looking at this going, well, where do you get this Tuesday? And where do you get this third Tuesday? Where do you get this annual May 19th? These options actually revolve around how this current activity is set up. So when I come in here, this is actually that third Tuesday. So that's where that's coming in. It's May 19th and it's on a Tuesday. So when I come back down here to this reoccurrence, that's why we're showing this weekly on Tuesday, this monthly on the third Tuesday, and this annually on May 19th. So again, however you have this originally set up, that's how this is going to repeat. Not too complicated, but I know every now and then I'll get the, well, what if this week has to be on the Monday versus that? That's when you're going to create it as just a whole on separate activity and then recreate that pattern should it fall on a Monday instead. So again, make it easier on yourself, set it to however you need it. Now, maybe it's not something that repeats monthly or weekly or annually, but something that repeats maybe every 3 months or every 6 months. It's not something we do as frequently. That's actually where we can come down here and create this custom. So maybe you have something that's a little interesting. Maybe you have it repeat every 90 days, something like that, or every 45 days. You can set that in here under this custom. Maybe it is something where it's every 16 weeks. So it's, again, kind of just picking these random ones here. You can put this in here. If it is something where it's only every 6 months, twice a year, that's where you'll pick every 6 months. Just know when you pick this month scenario, it's going to get that same kind of parameter of kind of asking monthly on the 19th or monthly on the third Tuesday. Again, based on how the fact that we have this one set up on the 19th or that third Tuesday. So that's where, again, that's coming from. But when it comes to this reoccurrence, that really is your option as far as how you want it to appear, how often, what's this frequency. This is, again, something that you can use. One thing I always recommend, put a repeat end state. The only reason why I say that is because if you click in here, you can find when you click on the month that you can go out rather extreme. And if we are all in business booking activities to the year 11,900, I'd be very impressed. But save yourself the time. If this is something we feel like really is only going to affect us for the next 2, 3, 4 years, put an end date of maybe like 5 years out. The reason being is that if you do need to complete it early, then you're only removing 5 years versus 25, 30 years. It's just going to, again, kind of saving you that extra time down that road. Now, you don't have to have it as repeating. Not every activity should repeat, of course, but that's always going to give you that option no matter what. Above that, you also have notify team though. Again, this is kind of following along the lines of that high priority. I don't know if I'd notify a team every single time I add an activity. That might be a bit overwhelming. So kind of use this sparingly. What I always suggest when it comes to a notified team, maybe you've been trying to book someone for the last 2 months and they've been just dodging you, and finally you have them on the books. That might be something that's worth notifying a team. Or maybe there's like kind of an emergency meeting that we have to have. This is where I'd notify that team. So similar to that high importance, use this sparingly, choose it wisely. Your privacy options, maybe you have an activity you need to add in here where really you're the only one that needs to see about it, or maybe it's just you and your team that you need to see about it. That's where you have this privacy options. The one thing I will say though, if you are the database owner, you are going to see everything. Privacy options are really not a concern for you. You will see everything. So with that said, if you are worried about maybe your boss seeing that you're getting some random colonoscopy doctor's appointment a couple weeks from now, maybe don't make it so specific. Don't have that conversation. You can just put in their doctor's appointment, leave it a little bit more vague. But again, this really is your option should you not wish for everyone in the office to see that. And coming down here further under actions, this is actually where we can save and complete, because again, we want to complete those activities once they're done. So that's where that save and complete comes in. If you've completed an activity which spurred on another new activity to happen, that's where you can use the save, complete, and new. The save and clone, maybe you have, it's not necessarily repeating, but you know for a fact you're going to have to do something very similar again. That's where the save and clone can come in. And then this delete option, I'm going to honestly say, don't use this too often. You really shouldn't be deleting your activities unless it's legit an error. We should be completing our activities as much as we can. Now, I know the question becomes, well, Catherine, what happens if they reschedule or they can't make the meeting? That obviously I don't want to say that it happened. This is where I might recommend having a category of like canceled no-show. So that way I can still complete it, but then I can always see under this category option that, oh, just because it's completed didn't mean it happened. It actually shows that they no-showed, so we need to reschedule it. So just a suggestion, but it really can be helpful in terms of, again, tracking maybe those contacts who are a bit infamous for rescheduling on you. That could really be helpful for you there. And then also down here, you have this timeline, and like timeline on the main CRM is kind of that tattletale to the system telling you when it was created, who made the changes, who did what, when, where type of scenario. So that's really helpful as well. So that's kind of those details as far as the inner workings when it comes to activities. Again, you're going to find there's multiple ways, which actually brings me to yet another way you can add an activity. And that's from the calendar itself, because again, these are calendar events. So why wouldn't we have that option out there as well? So coming to calendar on the left-hand side, I'm going to give it a moment here to load. I'm going to get back to today though, of course. This is going to go ahead and show me what I have again on my agenda. What do I have to complete? So I can always change who I'm looking at. So maybe I need to book an activity for multiple, and I don't want to run that risk of double booking myself. I can always come in here, highlight whoever needs to be involved in that particular activity, and I can see all of just those specific contacts on their calendar and go, oh, it looks like they're free at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Perfect. I can double click on that space. It's going to go ahead and pre-fill the start date and start time. And then I can just, again, make those changes. I could also use that template again to come in here and again, help pre-fill more of that information. So if I did have that follow-up phone call or I had that meeting that needs to occur, I can go ahead and schedule that with that template. Another thing as well, though, that could make it easier on you, if you're looking at this and you're like, how did she get all of these different colors? Under actions, you can make these color changes, which I really encourage because it's easier to distinguish, hey, what's the client review versus what's a follow-up phone call versus what's maybe just a onboarding client versus what is a staff meeting. It really can help you distinguish it. Just know that these activity colors are based off of type. So again, I'm really going to stress, if there's not a type out there that you currently use and you need it, make sure you work with your admin to get that entered into your managed database list. But again, you can add an activity just by kind of double clicking on the space and date that you need. And you can also always just click into the activity and it'll redirect you back to that activity details page. So really helpful in terms of managing kind of your day-to-day activity. I actually always have my calendar open just because, again, I find I'm booking a lot of activities right now and I don't want to accidentally double book myself. This is a really good spot to come to just to, again, avoid that potential error. Now, we've gone over how to add an activity multiple ways. We've gone over the inner workings of activities. We've gone over where to go to add an activity template. Now let's kind of answer that question of, well, what if I need to report on it? That's where these activity reports can come into. So as again, you might have guessed, we're going to click on reports on the left-hand side. And I'll wait for that to load here. Perfect. And then actually right at the top here, the second option here, we have activity reports. Now you have a few to choose from here. Usually the most popular is going to be this activities by contact, but if you are kind of going, hey, I want to know everything that's been assigned to me specifically from everyone else, that's where this is going to come in, or maybe the reverse. Maybe you need to know all of the activities that you have assigned. That's what these are kind of designed for, is just narrowing it down further. You also have deleted activities. So again, I'm stressing this again, complete your activities, try to avoid deleting them unless they are legit in error. I get it, we're human, we're bound to make mistakes, but avoid deleting everything should it just be like something that's outdated. You really should complete it as best we can. But clicking into this activities by contact report, we have, again, all of these that was in English, upcoming activities in here based on specific dates, the types, subjects, linked contacts, any descriptions. But if I need to filter it down, I have that option to filter. So this is tying in, I think probably the third time now here, that value of adding in activity types and categories. Because if there's specifically, hey, I want to know every client review I've had since, let's go from January 1st to, I want to look into the future, see what I've got scheduled out for June. I can literally come out and have that specific date range that I can always adjust. If I need to narrow it down to a specific servicing advisor, I definitely can. Same with writing advisor. I can always come in here and go, you know what, I want to know not only what I have coming up, but I also want to know what we've finished this year. I can always have open and completed. So that's coming back to what I was saying earlier, where activities can really show us kind of some of the past, but also the future. That's this part right here. I can have my repeating option. So again, want to make sure I capture everything, but maybe I just, again, want that specific client review type. Not worried about maybe making it narrower with categories, but I could. I can also define it further with attendees if I really wanted to here. But I want to just get that type within that specific date range. I'll apply that and I'll get literally just this report filtered down to what I'm looking for. So if this is something that you need, maybe it's not client review, maybe it's everything that's just a phone call for a specific contact. Maybe it's all of the phone calls you've done within the last 2 months that have a specific subject. You can really use that in here to filter it down. You can always export this out should you need this on like an Excel version. If you need to PDF it, you definitely can. Or you can always send these contacts back to search. Maybe we're still kind of working from home and we don't feel comfortable having visitors in the office yet. Totally understandable, each their own. But we know for a fact that we meet with all of our clients every 6 months. So if we've already met with them in January, that's coming up here again. So I can always send a search, and maybe that's where I can utilize just sending like a broadcast email saying, hey, we're all still working from home. If you're interested in holding off, we definitely can. Otherwise, we can do a Zoom meeting or a phone call. But again, it's giving us that option based off of what we've already run with that activity to have that search field option. So a lot that goes into activities, but always keep in mind, this is literally telling you what you have to get done, what you've got going on in the future, what you've already completed in terms of those activities. But this is really your advantage to say, here's what's going on. We always have that phrase, that saying, and I'm sure you've all heard it, if it's not in Redtail, it didn't happen. this is really where that's coming from. If you're not putting in these activities, there's really no historical proof. There's nothing in the future saying, oh yeah, you plan to meet with them. So definitely make sure you're taking that time on whichever route you want to go in terms of adding those activities, but to make sure that we're actually doing that and then completing them.
Thanks so much for joining us today for this particular session. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call at 800-206-5030, option 3 for support, or just shoot us an email over to support@redtailtechnology.com. Thanks a lot and have a great day.